Welcome to another installment of This Is Not Normal on the Political Drain podcast with Drill Sergeant Doug, aka Admin Doug, a U.S. Army veteran, teacher, musician, and family man from Jamaica, now fights for justice and democracy through commentary and humor. Follow him on YouTube at Political Drain and at Sons of Liberty Official as Drill Sergeant, aka Admin Doug, continues to protect our freedoms.
First of all, Iran is ready and willing to make concessions on nuclear. And only nuclear. The thing is, the Israelis keep moving the goalposts and pretending like this is about, weapons, when in reality, this is about Israelis wanting regime change. So now they're saying, we want Iran to give up their ballistic missiles and be defenseless, knowing that Israel wants to attack them.
I believe we're going to war with Iran. I believe most of you may know that now. There's another part of that, though, which is last week, Friday, I said the same thing. What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here. And last week, I told you guys something. I compiled a bunch of data points. I saw where we were heading. And I know you saw the thumbnail, so you know where this is going. This is what I said last week. After Pam Bondi's debacle, after her debacle has rung loud and clear to the news media, or at least they're feigning that response, the calls for impeachment have been ramped up for her, for other people in the cabinet. As impeachment calls start ramping up on MSN, or MS Now as they're called, on CNN, and everywhere except right-wing sycophantic news. It's a good time. It's a good time for a distraction. Recently, in the past couple of days, U.S. ships started to go there with certain type of weapons that are made for knocking drones out the sky, which are specifically for defensive purposes, and Bibi Netanyahu just came here the other day quietly, that no one's talking about. It's a good time for a distraction. Not only that, see, there's a Security Council meeting in Munich today, and more than one, almost all of the leaders of countries on the Security Council said the old world order is dead. They don't want to be a part of that. And that is a great cue for an orangutan who wants to distract you, who's proven it's a good time for a distraction whenever he's down. Whenever there's a problem and he's been beaten, he's having to withdraw, he's losing court cases, and those pesky impeachment calls are on every news station, it's a good time for a distraction. This is off the top. This is not knowledge that I have from any insider source. This is just looking at the situation for what I see it to be. I've seen them preparing and amping up to do a strike in Iran because, people who have hammerheads only see nails, and Trump is a hammerhead if I've ever seen one. Every single piece of that was important. Every data point that I pointed out was important, not just rhetoric, not just talking points. Now, the most important part of that was it was off the top of the head. It didn't have any sources. This week, we have some. This is Preston Stewart. You may remember I had him on the channel the other day. Not only is he a historian, he's an expert in military history. He studies, watches it every day. He's the number one person reporting on what's happening in Ukraine, and the reason why I was so proud to even interview him. Here's what he has to say.
The Trump administration is closer to a major war in the Middle East than most Americans realize. That's Axios reporting last night what most of us are seeing, that it is looking more and more like war with Iran is imminent. I mean, this is the largest buildup of U.S. military forces in the Middle East in decades, significantly larger than recent operations against Venezuela or even last year's strikes on Iran, Operation Midnight Hammer. So today we're going to talk about what is happening right now, as well as some arguments being made for and against U.S. military action in Iran.
So we have him reporting on Axios. I'd rather hear it from him because if Axios said it, he's using them as a reference, but using his knowledge as the frame. I think it's important that you see what my friends, ex-military, ex-intelligence, have to say about what's going on. These are conversations that I have in private with people who've been there, who know what's going on, and who see patterns. Here's the next thing he said. Now, as you take that in, YouTube, make sure that you digest the part we're alone. Because this sad sack with a too long red tie, this bird nest harebrain of a fool, of a president, orange president that we have. The tangerine tornado himself has isolated us. That's why last week when I said after the Security Council, when everybody that matters, let's be honest, said we're alone, and the consequences will be, well, quite frankly, nobody's going to defend Iran, even if they're not going to help us. They're out of it. They've washed their hands of this. That brings us to the next point I brought up in last week's assessment, which is Bibi Netanyahu was over here quietly, just visiting. Well, the reason why I could see that as a data point for war being imminent is now being realized by other networks that are telling you this.
You look at what's happened in Gaza, and one of the keys to it was when we took those beautiful, magnificent, we just ordered 22 more of them, updated model. The B-2 bombers are incredible. It went into Iran, and it totally decimated the nuclear potential. And when it decimated that, all of a sudden we had peace in the Middle East. Now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
Well, that was President Donald Trump speaking at the first meeting for the so-called Gaza Peace Board, where various individuals salivated over the notion of building resorts and hotels in this prime real estate known as Gaza. But for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to focus on potential war with Iran, because according to Axios reporter and Israeli insider Barak Ravid, the Trump administration is closer to a major war in the Middle East than most Americans realize. First of all, Iran is ready and willing to make concessions on nuclear and only nuclear. The thing is, the Israelis keep moving the goalposts and pretending like this is about, weapons, when in reality, this is about Israelis wanting regime change. So now they're saying, we want Iran to give up their ballistic missiles and be defenseless, knowing that Israel wants to attack them. No, they're not going to give up their ballistic missiles, nor should they, to be honest with you. No country should be pressured or forced to give away or let go of any type of military capability that they have for their own self-defense.
Quick subtext, in case you didn't get it, the entire peace board, this made-up foolishness that Trump is supposedly the head of, was talking about B-2 bombers the whole time. The board of peace was talking about B-2 bombers and how awesome they were the whole time. Real quick, second piece of subtext, why Bibi Netanyahu coming here was important, even though he was quietly is because as they're moving the goalpost, they need to make sure that we're playing ball. That's what I was saying. All right, back to the scheduled program. It's the data point that I mentioned about Netanyahu coming over, visiting, all of a sudden, in quiet. Shh. That's important. That's important because of what Iran means to them, to the people who are holding these hotels, who can't wait to build their hotels on the bones of dead Palestinian children. They also want to feel safe, and Iran, well, quite frankly, is the only threat to that safety, because everybody else in the neighborhood there has sold their soul for the sake of this, you know what, right here, I'll put how I know that as well. UAE, all of them, with Jared Kushner and Israel's ex-finance guy have been putting together this entire plan, and they're all down with it, except Iran. But this is the point.
Prior to that, they had reported that Trump hasn't decided whether to order strikes, or if he does order them, whether the aim would be to halt Iran's already battered nuclear program, wipe out its missile force, or try to topple the regime. Now, if Trump did limited strikes and wiped out, Iran's ballistic missiles, I guarantee Israel would still be breathing down his neck. We want regime change, because that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. They want regime change.
Anna, there's another giant answer there for you guys. So the president of the United States has not made up his mind why he's going to attack Iran. Then why are we attacking Iran? Why didn't you bring half our fleet into the Gulf if you don't even know why we're attacking them, what your objective is. That's because it is not our objective, it's Israel's objectives. And they're saying, I want all of it, the nuclear program, the ballistic missiles. He's not negotiating with Iran. There's fake negotiations with Iran right now. He's negotiating with the Israelis. But sir, pretty please, can I just knock out their ballistic missiles, but not do regime change? Because regime change is gonna require ground troops. And Netanyahu comes along and goes, shut up, do as I tell you. And Trump's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And then JD Vance and everybody comes in, limited strikes, it'll be okay. Marco Rubio's like, yeah, start the war, start the war.
Now, I'm sorry that I had to expose you to TYT. I absolutely will never subscribe to them or give them any money. But when they're right, they're right. It's kind of how they grew as big as they got in the first place. There's another data point in there. This is called the distraction, right? The wag the dog. Here's what our military intelligence friend had to say there. Yes, he's correct. Once again, I know you saw that before, but now maybe you read it in a different light. When you're wondering, how did I know? Why did I think this way? And it hasn't been proven or borne out yet, but the sources are now piling up. They are now piling up. Not only these guys who I trust, their opinion, not only Preston Stewart, who I trust, his opinion on things like this. Now we have more of the more mainstream news sources, well, independent news source, TYT. Here's another one.
So today, we're going to talk about Trump's Iran buildup, what it looks like, and what comes next. About a week ago, I put out a video going over Trump's decision to deploy additional military assets to the Mideast. The short version of that video is that the deployment of the second carrier was unnecessary and primarily a show for his base at home. But the deployment of the THAAD system was a clear indication that the military thinks Chicken and Waffles Trump is serious about hitting Iran again. Since then, the buildup has only intensified. Trying to establish U.S. intent based on Trump's statements is a fool's errand. He is not a reliable source of information. But looking at assets deployed can tell us a lot. The administration is saying they'll be ready for military action by this weekend. The reality is, they've been capable of strikes in Iran for quite some time. Since the last video, the amount of attack aircraft in the region has dramatically increased. Perhaps more importantly, we've seen KC-135 refueling planes, and we've seen a lot of airborne control centers enter the region or go to places close enough to be used. Unlike last time, this buildup is huge. The last strikes were over in 30 minutes. There are now enough resources there to run a campaign exceeding 30 days, which really means forever because of resupply.
So yeah, we're here. Take it seriously. Family members of people who are in the military, of people who are in civilian services to the military, take it seriously, understand we're close. And I say that with confidence. And here's the thing. If I'm wrong, man, that would be so awesome. That would be so awesome. But I'm not the only one who thinks this. And just so you know, the person you just heard from, that's a channel that has survived 2 separate hosts that in matters like this have almost never been wrong over 5 years. So I'm pretty confident in my gut feeling, in my data points. You too can see those data points. You too can see those data points. Learn to see the data points. And it ends with, basically, we're dealing with a madman who's in love with gold, who's partnered with an Israeli Nazi Zionist who also is in love with gold. And he really thinks that he can rule the world. More is coming. I'm not sure that this is the thing to stop elections. I know that's a question people are going to ask. He's doing this so we can stop the elections. It doesn't work that way in our Constitution. He's already doing what he needs to do for that. He's building up a paramilitary force to enforce and to scare people from going into the polls altogether. And he's using Atlanta as a test base to just take shit out and just take it over. So no, using war as a way to stop elections isn't how America works. He's found better ways to do that, quite frankly. This on its own is just bad enough. So the time to fight is now. This weekend, you might see this, by the way. That's why I'm telling you now, at midnight. This is coming soon. Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads. It's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works.
That was the Political Drain podcast, which can be heard on www.groovechillradio.com/political-drain and can be viewed on the Political Drain YouTube channel anytime. Once again, thank you for listening to Groove Chill as we resist fascism in any form, pursue democracy, peace, and love.